Thanks for tuning in to more pro and college football talk on the OFN Today. As the NFL playoffs begin on Saturday with Wild Card Weekend and the College Football National Championship game kicks off Monday night. Ted Sevransky of Covers.com and I will preview all the big games with updated odds, injury reports, picks, and more as the OFN Today for this Thursday, the 3rd of January, 2019 starts now. This edition of the OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com, home of the best depth charts on the net, and Covers.com, featuring live score stats and odds, and is considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so it's 2019. That means we're seriously getting ready for the playoffs, Ted, and it also means that we have one more college football game to go. How about that? You happy or pumped or sad?
That's an interesting question because, I don't view the title game as a fan. I've never, it's been a long time since I've been a proper fan of college football. And for a fan, it's the two best teams in college football. From a better, all right, we've seen it before.
Yes.
It's not an easy handicap. Whichever team you're going to step in front of is a team you don't want to step in front of. And it's, you can see why, you understand why the ticket sales are down. The ratings will be there. But excitement-wise, I love college football. I'm sorry to see the season end. I wish we had another, 3 more months of college football to go because I find that sport to be rather profitable.
Yeah, and just reading about the more talk about changing the college football playoff format, and they're, of course, complaining about more games, and I get where they're coming from, and I'm not trying to sit here and say that they need necessarily more games. I think, of course, if they spread out the season more and had a couple of less regular season nonsensical games on the schedule, like who in the world wants to see SEC teams play 2 FCS teams? You can make that work, but of course, once I get into the whole reading of the whole playoff changing, it's like I just read it just to see what they're talking about, but I have no illusions of anything changing anytime soon because especially once I hear about the politics of it, and I hear some of the commissioners or whoever it may be talking about how, we get great feedback on this. This is everything everybody wants. I mean, sure, if you're comparing it to the BCS, you're right. If you're comparing it to what everybody else really wants, well, you're wrong.
Well, I mean, the NCAA, and again, they how do I phrase it? I'm not going to try to phrase it politely. The NCAA is the most corrupt organization in sports, period. Recognize that they have no interest whatsoever in helping kids get education. Recognize that the NCAA is designed to produce profit for the member institutions, and that's what it's there for. It is a giant corporation trying to play off as, we're for the kids, we're a nonprofit. It's nonsense. So every decision the NCAA makes is about how to make more money. It has nothing to do with anything else, and we know an 8-team playoff is going to produce more money than a 14 playoff will. Inevitably, eventually, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, we just have to hear all of the political nonsense that goes on, whether it's in the media, wherever the case may be, because that's what it is. It's about they have to figure out how to grease everybody and make everybody happy. That's all it is. Because once you take this, and the whole bowl thing too, that has to kind of no question they're going to keep bowls, but right now the way they have it structured with the bowl set up for the playoffs, it's just so ridiculous. It's like I don't even know what they're talking about. I mean, it's playoff game 1 and playoff game 2. It ain't no Rose Bowl or Sugar Bowl. I mean, nobody cares about the bowl in playoffs. They have to get rid of that.
But the vested interests that control the bowls are well-financed and powerful.
Yep.
Make no mistake about it.
Sure.
I mean, the 2 national championship semifinal games should be both played on New Year's Day. And they can't play them on New Year's Day because the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl own New Year's Day. And that's just how it is. And the power brokers behind the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl are strong enough to influence the NCAA in a significant way. So the NCAA gets influenced in significant ways by all kinds of things that have nothing to do with what's right and what's good for the kids and what's good for college football. And let's not forget, for every one of these bowls, okay, there are multiple administrators making six-figure salaries to put these bowl games together. Everybody's getting paid, except for the kids.
That's right. And sooner or later, they may have to do something about that. Okay, so
I'll take the over on when that happens.
Okay.
The NCAA reform is non-existent.
Yeah. That's. I mean, at least they we're in that beginning phase, but we're many years away from.
Take the over.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so like you were saying, did you see ticket sales are down?
Of course they're down. It's the same teams.
Okay,
and the game's in San Francisco.
I'm glad to hear that. I really am, because that does validate all of my feelings about this matchup, because it's true. This is what happens when you hear people talking about rematches. We see it in the NBA, and it's Cleveland and Golden State, and now it's Alabama, Clemson, and some people want to talk about how but dynasties are great and all this. Look, I have no problem with having Nick Saban or even Dabo Swinney be successful, and I think that's great. And how do you not admire that? I think it's always great in any sport to have that dominant team that everybody wants to beat. That's great. I'm fine with that. There ain't no problem there. But now we got two of them, and we only have 4 spots. This is what you get. And I don't really, honestly, if these two guys continue to coach there, it ain't changing. It's just not.
That's the thing. It's like, Alabama as a program isn't going anywhere. And Clemson as a program isn't going anywhere. Now, you might see teams that have that magical year and get into the mix, but to be able to beat one of those two squads. And this is kind of like what Pete Carroll was creating at USC.
Yeah.
Where they were in the mix every single season. Mac Brown at Texas kind of had a similar spot. It wasn't just the Vince Young years that Texas was in the mix. But they weren't able to hold the level of dominance for quite as long as Alabama, not even close to as long as Alabama has. And now the Clemson's been there, 4 or 5 years in a row. Clemson's certainly in that same boat. And of course, the question as a handicapper you ask is, how much of a gap is there between these two teams?
Yeah.
Alabama spent the whole season. Alabama power rated as high as any team in college football
Greatest
that I've ever had.
Of all time. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I've been out here in Vegas since '98, and the teams that there was like the 2000 Miami team and the 2005 USC. There were a couple teams that were close.
Yeah.
But Alabama is legitimately the best team in college football in the last 20 years. So stepping in front of that squad is not easy to do. That being said, Clemson has shown, repeatedly, we can play with these guys.
Sure.
And you ask me which QB I want my money on, Trevor Lawrence or Tua. Lawrence might well be the guy.
Really?
He would go. He's a freshman. He would go number 1 in the NFL draft if he was able to this year, and Tua probably wouldn't.
I look at even just these two matchups last week, and I even though the Alabama game was closer and more competitive, I just don't knock Alabama for it. I look at it where I see what happened in the Notre Dame Clemson game. At any time, we knew Notre Dame was different from Oklahoma. We knew Oklahoma had a different team. Oklahoma, no defense. It was going to be all about their explosive offense. Or could Alabama? What could Alabama's defense do to stop them? And you know what? If that game might have went another half, Oklahoma might have beat them. Because Oklahoma took a whole half to get going. And once they got going, it was just a matter of, Alabama wasn't stopping them either. So they just got off to a slow start. Alabama got a big lead, and then there you go. For Notre Dame Clemson, that game was decided on Clemson getting all the calls that could have gone either way. And I actually think there were a couple of calls that I just think that should have went Notre Dame's way. And Love getting hurt. Now, if Notre Dame gets all the calls, Love never gets hurt, I think we got a football game. And I think because of that, I'm not going to say, I think Clemson was far more impressive to me because of the way the score indicated. No, I don't think that at all. I still like Alabama. I think Alabama was more impressive. I think because Notre Dame, I think that game really didn't even get going until Love got hurt in the second quarter. Clemson wasn't doing anything early in the game. Alabama's much better than Notre Dame. I think that's going to last the entire 4 quarters instead of just a quarter. I like Alabama. It's going down. I get it, and I'm happy about that. But I like Alabama. It's especially now that it's only potentially I can maybe get 5. Only have to give 5.
Yeah, I mean there's clear, sharp support for Clemson in the betting markets. And again, what we saw, the 2 results from last week, the actual effect that's had in the game, it's on the point spread. The look-ahead line was Alabama 7.5 or 8.
Yes.
Now we're looking at Alabama, 5.5, 6. There's even some 5s out there right now. So without a shadow of a doubt, the fact that Bama didn't cover and Clemson did, the fact that Clemson shut down a weaker opponent than the one Alabama faced, has influenced the number for this ball game. All that being said, Clemson's really good.
Oh, yeah, sure. We're nitpicking here. You
I'm
have
in
to.
no
You got to
rush
pick a
to step
side.
in front of Clemson.
I get it. Yeah, sure. Yeah. You got to pick a side, and that's the way it is. And then when you do, you just you go for it. And then, look, I can understand if somebody says, you know what, I think this is a flip of the coin game, and therefore I'll just take Clemson, I'll take their money line, and I'll go for it. And I've done that before, and I'm sure. And I'll even get into that with the Eagles and the Bears. But I don't know. SEC, ACC as well. There's just something yet. And you know what sometimes it is, too, is because you do nitpick these really good teams. You kind of expect them to be better, to be more dominant. And sometimes they just play as good as they need to play. And a team like Clemson has not had to deal like Alabama with the SEC championship game. A team like Clemson hasn't really had to deal with any of that since the Texas A&M game, where things really looked like maybe we could actually lose this game. They pretty much have cruised a lot in second halves for like the last 3 or 4 months. Does that mean that they're that good, or does that mean that they just haven't been able to play teams yet capable of hanging with them in the second half? And when that happens, we'll find out about the true Clemson team. That's what we'll find out on Monday night.
Sure. Although, I mean, we've seen enough out of Clemson in recent seasons to make me not overly concerned that they're going to be outclassed here. Now, whether they can beat Alabama is another question. But from a class standpoint, and you grade out the personnel, going into the season, grade out the personnel. Alabama's number 1 in the country. Clemson's number 2 in the country. It's not like they're short on NFL talent. So I don't think the class difference here is all that great. And, you look at the SEC in bowl season, all right, you have Auburn's big win. All right, well, you got Vandy losing. You have Florida blowing up Michigan. Yeah, okay, but you have South Carolina getting shut out. You have A&M blowing somebody up, or you have Missouri losing as chalk. It's not one of these bowl seasons where you're like, yeah, the SEC was so dominant this season, we have to be on SEC teams. They weren't. Obviously, it's still the best conference in college football, but the difference between the SEC and everybody else wasn't all that great this year in comparison to how it's been in some seasons past.
All right. As far as the NFL playoffs are concerned, the wild card on this weekend, and we can pretty much start with the games in order. We can start with the games on Saturday, and that's where our first game is going to be the Indianapolis game against Houston, and actually the Colts. And I think we talked about this last week. We just had like a quick comment about it, and about, hey, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it was Indianapolis and Baltimore in the championship game. And now I did my more intensive research and okay, how am I going to do this and so forth and so on. And I went back and forth a lot with these games and these teams. I think there's so much. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. Because I said this with Mark Lawrence yesterday, when you take a look at the top seed teams, most of them have kind of cruised in to the playoffs, and I'm talking about the top 4 seeds. They've kind of cruised in. They're not playing their best football. The teams that are playing their best football, they're teams in the bottom seeds. They're the hottest teams. They're playing great. That's what's going to make these playoffs, I think, so intriguing, because a lot of times those teams, and we've seen this, it happens in the NFL, not in a lot of other sports, but in the NFL, you get these teams, these 5 or 6 seeds that can come in hot. They can make it all the way to the Super Bowl and win one. And that's kind of the way I feel about the Colts. I just don't know about Houston, because I still don't think at this point, when you get to the playoffs, that they can man up. Their offensive line is still an issue. It's Hopkins and Watson on offense, and pretty much that's it. And Watt and Clowney on defense. And to tell you what, pretty much that's it. They got superstars, and then they got a lot of average to below average guys that can take you to a regular season championship in that division. But the Colts, you know what? If they started off 9-1 in their first 10, they would have ran away with this division. So I just think they're the better team. I'll take a couple of points. I'll take the Colts.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't talk you out of it. And you make an excellent point when it comes to Houston being a little bit top-heavy, and that's my biggest concern for the Texans in this ballgame. Well, I got a bunch of concerns for the Texans in this ballgame. This isn't a game I'm loading up on. And one of the biggest issues, and one of the things I do very well with in wild card round, I look at strength of schedule.
Okay.
Teams that face tougher schedules have done not just a little bit, they've done very well in the wild card round. And if you look at strength of schedule, look at something very simple, like a Sagarin strength of schedule. Teams with a differential of 10 or more, they've casted about a 70% clip over the last 17 seasons dating back to 2002. So It's been a pretty strong money winner. Indy, based on Sagarin's numbers, Indy's dead last, and Houston's just a couple spots ahead of them. So two teams that have absolutely feasted on the weak.
Yeah.
When we look at the quarterbacks here, I got bet on versus bet on. Luck versus Watson. Two guys I want my money on, not my money against. We look at the two defenses. We've got bet on versus bet on. Indy's defense has been the undervalued commodity in the NFL. Of all the teams, the Colts defense has been the one that the people haven't respected all year. We're starting to see some of it now.
Okay.
When it comes to the coach, now we finally have an edge. All right. I really don't understand how Frank Reich is not the shoo-in for NFL Coach of the Year. I mean, I haven't even heard his name. And we're talking, Andy Reid and John Harbaugh. I'm hearing, Anthony Lynn. The Colts were 1-5
yeah,
with a bottom-tier defense and a rusty quarterback and a bunch of injuries and no weapons. And look where they are now.
Oh, yeah.
Frank Reich engineered that turnaround. Bill O'Brien, as we know, is an ass clown. Okay? We've seen it for how long? O'Brien is making the conservative decisions and making the wrong calls. And Reich, in a playoff game, we saw it last year. How did the Eagles win the Super Bowl last year? When Doug Peterson, Frank Reich's play calling was stellar. Stellar. And I think that's where Indy has the edge here. So in a game that's pick 'em in a lot of different ways, I think the coaching edge does go to the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll take my shot with Andrew Luck catching points as opposed to Deshaun Watson laying them. Not a strong play, just an opinion.
All right, and then in the second game, the primetime game on Saturday night, Seattle-Dallas, another game. This one specifically I went back and forth on. I was with the Colts early on, and I stuck with them this week. But this one I went back and forth. But when it came down to it, I was so divided that the flipping point for me was the most logical of them all. The thing that should flip you, which is the thing that should just hit you in your face when you first look at these two teams. Am I going to take Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll or Prescott and Garrett? And I'm going with Seattle. They got the best rushing offense in the NFL. That has made life so much easier for Russell Wilson. They've got the NFL best turnover margin. That is going to make things a little bit difficult on Prescott to make sure that he does not make mistakes if they can get to him, because this is not the same Dallas Cowboy offensive line. They even have some guys that are battered up, let alone, of course, their center out for the year. But look, I'm not saying I love Seattle. I'm pretty torn on this one, but I'm going with Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, when you break it down, Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott laying points to Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, it's a one-way handicap.
Yes.
I mean, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at Pete Carroll in these opening round games with Seattle, 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the spread. The only game they didn't cover was the Blair Walsh game in Minnesota, although they're supposed to lose that game. They didn't because the kicker missed a field goal. That was a wild card weekend.
Okay.
So there is, some concern there, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But the bottom line is we are talking about a coach and a quarterback with an extraordinary track record versus a coach and a quarterback with a track record in the other direction.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I see in favor of Seattle in this ballgame. And that may be enough.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, sure.
But when you look at the Seahawks home road, boy,
That's right.
They're a lot better at home than they are on the highway.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's been the case for many years. That's been the case this season. When you look at the state of these two offensive lines, Dallas' offensive line healthy, Seattle's offensive line still banged up, really banged up. Russell Wilson was under pressure big time last week. The Week 17, both teams won Week 17, yeah. Dallas got momentum off that win. Seattle lucky to escape. And Dallas is a better team. I mean, if you throw everything out the window and grade out the personnel and grade out the results.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Dallas is the better of these two squads. They faced a tougher schedule, and they've done better against it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you talk about running the football, and, yeah, this game's going to be decided in the trenches. The Seahawks' great run defense allowed 5.9 yards per play against, 4.9 yards per carry against. Dallas, 3.8 yards per carry against. That's a huge differential in a playoff game. Carson doesn't find room. Hey, Wilson can make plays. We've seen him do it. And Russell Wilson's live to bring Seattle back in the fourth quarter if they're trailing. And, it's certainly not a game where you want to back up the Mack truck to the betting window.
No.
I think Dallas is a better team.
Yeah, I agree. And they're at home.
And if they are, then the coaching / QB edges that Seattle has won't be enough.
Well, that's the thing. We will see. Now, when you say better team, though, again, it depends what kind of a margin you're talking about. And I'm not going to give Dallas that much of a margin as far as a better team over Seattle. There are a lot of people who of course, because they're just such a polarized team. I was even watching one of the shows this week on FS1, and one of their topics is Dallas the worst team in the playoffs? So you know what that means. You know what that is about. But I agree. They're not like. Come on, they deserved it. They've done it for the whole season. They beat New Orleans, like you said. They've played good teams. They've been able to win close games. They deserve all the credit in the world. And there is a part of me that does believe that when a team has a season like this, that chances are it's not going to be over in one game. I kind of get that feeling with the Cowboys. I get the feeling I'm gonna cringe when I see Jerry Jones 50 times on Saturday night.
Take the over.
But anyway, it's Russell Wilson, it's Pete Carroll, and they're also having a pretty good season. And by the way, Baldwin's health is also big for Seattle because he gave him nothing for about the first 10 games of the season with his injury situation. The fact that he's adding to Russell Wilson's passing game is a big deal in the postseason if he's healthy. All right, let's get to Sunday's games. The Chargers and Baltimore. Now, this was one where, like Indianapolis, immediately, and this is one actually I saw, of course, a week or two ago because you could tell just looking at the playoff scenarios that this was going to be the matchup. And once I looked at this after the way Baltimore annihilated the Chargers that a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh, this is the one team out of any team. Probably all other four teams in the AFC, the one team the Chargers just do not want to face. And now they got to face them. So immediately I was like, oh, I've got Baltimore. I'm taking Baltimore. Keeping in mind that the Chargers were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl. So, but then I started saying, okay, well, let me think more about it. What happened to the Chargers in that game? They were coming off the Chief game. Allen wasn't healthy. Gordon wasn't healthy. Okay. But then after I put all of it together, I just kind of went back to the same thing, my initial reaction, because it's such a close game to handicap, as good as the Chargers have been away from home, and the fact that the Ravens kind of, even though they've won 4 straight at home, they don't cover at home, and they don't make it easy at home. So as much as I was torn, I just went right back to the matchup situation and said I just don't like the matchup for the Chargers. I just don't, and I'll take Baltimore.
Well, see, this is a really interesting scenario because we've got Lamar Jackson for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
In the NFL facing a defense that has seen him before.
That is true. Good point. I mentioned that yesterday. Good point.
And when we go back, I went back and took a look at Lamar Jackson's stats in college. Remember, he won the Heisman Trophy as a sophomore, as a 19-year-old sophomore, the youngest Heisman Trophy winner in history, I believe, at the time. And then he went back for his junior season, and the numbers weren't as good. And I went back through the game logs, game after game. He faced the team one year, the next year, the numbers weren't as good against them. It was pretty consistent throughout his post-Heisman season. LA didn't face him 3 months ago. They faced him 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
All right. Lamar Jackson has yet to be in a situation where he's had to rally his team from behind. He's yet to be in a situation where he's had to complete downfield throws to help his team win, to make his team win a game. I don't trust him. I flat out don't. If you want the simple handicap here, you said Chargers are the Super Bowl team, and you got a rookie quarterback on the other side. Come on, rookie quarterbacks laying points? Nah.
Yeah,
it's LA.
Yeah, I've never been. I mean, I said this during the whole Heisman process that I never thought Lamar Jackson should have won the Heisman. I thought it was, to me, a Heisman Trophy award should include big moments. Give me a moment against
the Florida State game.
I'm talking about. I know, but that's the afternoon Week 5 game. I'm talking about. And Florida State's no good anymore.
70.
I know, but Florida State's no good anymore. Jimbo Fisher left town after that. So I mean, but point is have that big. So he had opportunities against Clemson. Had opportunities. Did he close the deal? No. Because he never closed the deal in big spots against really big teams and big moments, and just got all of his stats against all of the also rans.
Then why do you want him here?
Well, the point you made is why I concurred with it as far as the whole 2-week thing. But the difference is that it's still only 2 weeks. And even though you do get the feeling that once the game was over, the Chargers, they didn't really they had no reason to game plan against Denver. For what? That game meant nothing. We're game planning against Baltimore because we know we're playing Baltimore in 2 weeks or, in 10 days. So, yes, there's a lot there that I completely get as far as now they basically can prepare for this guy for 3 weeks. Because my whole contention is that when the NFL gets an opportunity to prepare for Lamar Jackson in the offseason and they all get to figure this guy out, he's going to have to throw the football or they're done because he's not doing this next year. So I agree with you.
Look what Lamar did in the first game. I don't mean to cut you off, but, 13 rushes for 39 yards. One of them was for 27. So his other 12 rushes, he gained 12 yards.
No, sure, he threw the
completed
football.
12 passes in that ball game.
Yeah, it was his best. It was his best passing game, though. It was his best passing game.
The issue was the Chargers' offense not working.
It was. You're right.
Baltimore's offense doing great.
You're right.
Rivers threw picks. It wasn't a clean game.
Sure, absolutely.
For LA.
And that's the reason I'm taking.
If the Chargers don't play a clean game here, the Ravens are going to win.
Yeah, and that's why I'm going with Baltimore because that's what I said. I said I don't like the matchup, how Baltimore dominated the Chargers on the line of scrimmage. That doesn't change because of Lamar Jackson. That's not changing at all. That's the weakness of the Chargers is their offensive line. Baltimore's defense is a strength. It's been one of the best all season. That ain't changed. There's nothing the Chargers can do schematically, in my mind, to change what happened 3 weeks ago. They're going to have to find a way to make sure that Lamar Jackson does not throw for 200 yards, and they continue to hold him to 30 or 40 yards rushing. And if they could do that, and they could win the game 13-10, then we got something. But there's no way do I see the Chargers doing anything different unless something happened in the Cleveland game that the Browns exposed that the Chargers could take advantage of.
Here's the quote. I'm just looking at the quote from Phillip Rivers immediately after the game. We got off to a terrible start, turning the ball over on the first play. And we had 3 third down conversions called back that we really couldn't overcome.
Yes.
We got ourselves in third and super long a lot. It's a good defense, and they outplayed us today. We may get another crack at them in 2 weeks. So immediately after the game, he was already thinking about the Ravens, which speaks to what you were talking about just a few moments ago.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want Baltimore here. I mean, I understand how good Harbaugh is. I mean, Harbaugh's like Carroll. First round, 6-0 straight up, 6-0 against the spread. Really hard to step in front of that. But the Chargers are the better team.
All right, we'll see how that goes. And by the way, that first pass that Rivers was picked off, that was a bad pass. He could have had a touchdown on that play. He underthrew him. That was Mike Williams. Remember I was talking about Mike Williams after the big Kansas City game?
Yeah.
And then what does he get? What did he get? He got in that game. He did have a touchdown last week, I think. But that again, I don't care about that
Williams
game.
was one catch for 7 yards.
Oh, that was last week. Okay, then
against Baltimore.
Oh yeah, and then the next week against Denver, he had a touchdown. But yeah, 1-7. So that was my point. We talked about the Chief game. Is why if this offense is not going to open up completely as best they can until Phillip Rivers starts throwing the ball to both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen in the same game. Why he doesn't do that, I don't know. That's something. Stop throwing the ball to Antonio Gates. Stop throwing the ball to anybody else out there except maybe Melvin Gordon. Get the ball downfield and he tried it on the first play against the Ravens. He was open. He underthrew him for an interception. So Rivers has got to play a really good football game or they got no chance. All
Agreed.
right, Eagles and Bears, and this is the one that's got the biggest spread, and this is the one, as I just mentioned before, about understanding why people, if they want to take Clemson in the money line, I would go for it. That's why I'm taking the Eagles in the money line. I don't foresee that it's going to be a situation where Eagles they have a nice little run, but now they're playing the big boys and it's going to be a disaster. I don't see that with this particular Bears team. Not that I don't agree that they have a very good defense, but this is a first-time situation for this football team. They haven't been in this spot before. Trubisky isn't. I mean, that doesn't mean that he can't win playoff games. Mark Sanchez did, and he's the guy I compare Trubisky to. So I can see them winning some playoff games. I can see them beating the Eagles. It's just that I think we lose sight of the fact that the Eagles, everybody talks about Nick Foles. This is not just about Nick Foles. The Eagles have really done a good job of a lot of their key players that are still playing have turned up their game. Guys that were injured early on the season that are playing better now, whether it's you got Michael Bennett, Brendan Graham, you got the best defensive tackle in football, and Fletcher Cox, besides Aaron Donald, and then you have Chris Long, another veteran player. Those are really good defensive line group that are playing really well together. And throw in even the veteran Malcolm Jenkins back there. You've got the wide receivers playing fantastic now, thanks to Nick Foles. So it's not just Nick Foles. Yes, do they have key guys out? Yes, but they had key guys out last year, and they still won the Super Bowl. I love teams that are hot like the Eagles, that are Super Bowl champs, that people are ignoring, going up against inexperienced teams like the Bears. In saying that, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think the Eagles are going to win easy or anything like that. I could easily see the Bears winning this game. But I just think it's going to be a very close football game. And because of that, I'm taking the experienced Super Bowl champs that know how to win playoff games as dogs.
I certainly wouldn't talk you out of it. You look at this Bears team down the stretch. All right, they scored 15 against the Rams, 24 against the Packers, 14 against the Niners, 24 against the Vikings. The offense doesn't really work in any of those games.
No.
Trubisky throwing the ball downfield has not worked.
No.
And much like I was talking about, how many times do we have to see it? Yeah, for every Tom Brady who comes through in his first playoff appearances, there's 8 other quarterbacks in their first playoff appearances who look awful. And Trubisky is absolutely not a QB to trust when it comes to postseason football. And now, the question is how good the Bears' defense is going to be.
Yes.
Because Nick Foles is coming in with bruised ribs, and it is a Eagles offense that at times, when you look at the full season numbers, when you look at some of the road beatdowns that they suffered, I'll never get that Saints game out of my mind, where it was just that game was over, first quarter. And you don't see a lot of NFL games like that with defending Super Bowl champs. Philly still has their share of weaknesses, but they also have a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and they're catching points. And it's a Bears team that's hard to trust in this point spread range in the postseason, despite their regular season success. Let's not forget, Philly the markets are setting this number based on the Eagles' full season numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Eagles just over the last 3 weeks, you probably get a different point spread number than the one that you're seeing with Chicago laying 6 in this one. Philly with Foles down the stretch has been better than Philly without Foles and Wentz, Philly with Wentz for the middle 3 months of the campaign.
And remember, this is, again, what we see a lot. Not that every one of these teams is going to do it, because only one possibly can this season. But how many times do we see it? We saw it with the Giants twice. We've seen it with the Ravens. We've seen teams that have going into the final month of the season or the last couple of weeks of the season, they're just, will they even make the playoffs? Boom, they win 2 or 3 straight. Boom, they're playing their best football. Boom, they win a Super Bowl. And I could see that happening with several teams that are lower seeds heading into these playoffs. I really can.
Yes, I mean, honestly, I think a team that plays this weekend will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Okay,
I'm not convinced that's the case for the NFC.
I can go with that. Yeah, New Orleans still, to me, out of all the teams,
they're the team to beat.
Yeah, they're still the team to beat. Are they playing as good as they were earlier? No. But do they have to? No. So if they just all of a sudden light it up next week like they had a month or so ago, watch out, because they probably ain't losing. But yeah, I agree. I think we both agree on that point. And that's why I think, probably be a good idea to take all the. That's why I'm probably going to take the Colts, the Chargers, and the Ravens in the AFC, and then I'll go with the Eagles and in the NFC. I mean, why not? I could take 4 long shots to win. I feel good about wanting them to get to the Super Bowl. Just one team.
Sure, and then you can find a Super Bowl line right now, just AFC versus NFC. And I would expect, again, if we like the top seeds in the NFC more than the AFC, the time to bet that prop is right now at less than a field goal with the NFC over the AFC.
Oh, really? Is that what it is? Yeah. The NFC is less than a field goal favorite. Okay.
Yes,
that's a good.
That's not widely available. That's a good
point. That's a good point. So the strategy then for me is going to be take those dogs, then also take the NFC to win the Super Bowl to kind of hedge my bet. Just in case. And then if I get to the Super Bowl and it is the Saints against one of my AFC long shots, I'm set.
Yeah, but you're not hedging your bet. You're actually reinforcing your bet with the bet. If you're betting the long shots in the AFC and then you're laying 2.5 or 3 in the Super Bowl, you're making another bet that's doing the same thing. If you wanted to hedge it, you'd do back the other way. You can say, if my long shots don't come through, this line won't be as high. Therefore, I should take the points right now.
That's it. Ted, appreciate it. Thanks for the education as always, and you're going to enjoy the games. I hope we only have one more, like I said, one more college game to go. So,
well, yeah, I mean, look, the rest of the football season is 12 games. Less than one NFL Sunday. Got 11 playoff games in the NFL and 1 in college, and that's what we got, man. Let's enjoy them.
Yeah, this is like kind of like last week. No, actually, this is. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. This is the best week, pretty much. I know everybody talks about championship weekend, next weekend, I should say. A lot of people say the divisional, those 4 games next week is the best weekend in football. I think this weekend is, because we had some of the bowl games just a few days ago. You got the NFL playoff games, and you have the national championship game. So I just, but especially this weekend itself, the 4 playoff games and the national championship game. This is the best weekend of the year.
I like them all.
You better in your business. Thanks, Ted. Enjoy. Talk to you next week.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, take care. That's Teddy Covers. And you can check Teddy out at covers.com. And Teddy is with us, of course, every Thursday here on OFN Today on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network. All right, Mark Lawrence is in the books, so that's all ready, available on demand. We went over same thing, championship game, 4 playoff games. And that's what we're going to do again tomorrow with Dave Koken of covers.com here on the OFN Today. So many different observations from many different handicappers, all from covers.com. For Teddy Sevransky, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in once again to the OFN Today on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network. Alpha Mike Foxtrot.